It's Craiggie's Connacht Rugby Podcast. It's the round of 16 game against Benetton, and what a sad result that was for Connacht on not a great day, not a great performance. Before we get talking to William and Linley, here's some of the highlights, actually lowlights of the game, plus what myself and William thought directly after the final whistle.
Angers pulled down just short of the line, fed out. They're on an advantage and they drive over and Conor Oliver scores. It's all got a bit slow at the back, but they've gone through a multitude of phases here. Now there's an opportunity. It's up and it's running, and Connacht are in for try number 2. Simple move in the pass, and John Porch is in for the try, and Connacht lead by 10 points to 0 here.
Connacht are winning most of these contacts, but as I say, that's a brilliant offload. That's going to be a try.
Oh, that's a fantastic bit of work by Benetton. They've got themselves away down the wing. Connacht were a bit slow, and it's Marcus Watson trying to get the drive on. They have got the drive on. Connacht are being driven backwards. It's a penalty to Benetton. They've got the pass away out and inside, and it's an easy try in the corner. Running in to score is Marcus Watson. Prendergast picks up, feeds Blade. Blade flicks it out inside.
Ford is on.
Ford is on.
Difference.
Now they've got a space. Ford is up on the line. Ford is running. The offload isn't picked up by Connacht, but they've recycled it and they're going to score a try. Porch is in, and it's knocked on now by Benetton, but he regained it. They're inside the 22. One pass out to Watson. Watson looking for his hat trick, and in for the try, is Rutsa. It finished 41-19. Alan Deegan picked the bones out of that one. That was it's disappointing. The better side won, but that was a poor performance. You have to take that in. There's one thing losing, but that was a performance that simply wasn't at the required level.
Yeah, absolutely. You're looking at, I brought up the stats earlier on about the back five in the scrum and how many tackles they've missed. I think in the end, their back five in the scrum have missed 3 tackles, whereas the Connacht have missed 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You can't. That's the power. That's the powerhouse. Connacht came in. It was the first time they've had a time they played against a pack where Connacht were the bigger pack and would have liked to enforce the game. And for 15 minutes, it looked as though it was working. But then Benetton switched on. Those players, the guys like Rutsa, Lamaro, Canone was another excellent player, and for me, Pasquale was tremendous at tight head. They just dominated. They just dominated everything about the game, and the Connacht backline looked as though they hadn't seen each other in I don't know how long, compared to the backline that played last week. There was just no cohesion there. Forwards were giving them reasonable ball. The line-out didn't work for the first time this season. I think it was 2 overthrows, two crooked in, and at least 1 steal. So when the basics of the game are not working, then you're in trouble. And Connacht's basics have been working really well for most of the season. And they just seemed to struggle. They didn't know what to do when they went 12-0 up. They didn't control the game. But then Benetton are a bloody good side and put the pressure on, and Connacht weren't able to take it. They'll learn a few lessons from this, and as you say, there's some players to come in over the summer that might help fix some of the problems that happened out there today.
The away performances are a constant thorn in their side, but the lack of control today, and you can do this for any sport, but if Jack Carty was there, I'm going to turn that sound effect down because the band are getting going. If Jack Carty was there, would there have been a better shape and a little bit more control with his experience? That's not criticising Hawkshaw, I thought did okay, and Ford, who came into that position.
Yeah, maybe, but the midfield didn't click. The midfield for the last 5 weeks has clicked. The midfield today didn't click. And the only difference is that Carl Ford was on the bench and Bundy Aki was playing. And that maybe been a bit harsh on Bundy, but he didn't attempt to run with the ball at all in the first half. Everything he took, he either kicked it or he passed it on to someone else, and was so deep with his passes that he was inviting the opposition onto them. So you'd wonder, you look at the scores came from breaks made by John Porch off little feeds from Blady. But if you're not going forward, they went forward for the first 10 or 15 minutes of the game. After that, Benetton seemed to get into their stride. Once they got into their stride and once they started winning contacts, it's very difficult to come back from that. And they fed off the big crowd, like a full house today. First sellout they've had out there, I think, this season. And they fed off that crowd, as Connacht do when Connacht play at home. All right, so we got Linley MacKenzie here with us. We're out in TG Cahir in Ballinhown with great work done by Neil Keaveney as always, and Pádraig McHugh, who got us online today, which was wonderful to be able to get to this, to commentate in this match. And today we're joined by Linley because Rob's not well today. So Linley, that wasn't a great day for Connacht, really, was it?
It was a terribly, terribly disappointing game. I mean, I'm actually quite shocked, I have to say, by the level of that performance. And I don't think anyone was expecting that. But I have to say, you have to give credit to Benetton on this particular occasion. They actually reminded me of Connacht years ago when they actually delivered surprise performances before they became regular performances. And I just thought Benetton was so deserving of the victory on this occasion. It's not necessarily it's not necessarily a bad thing for, in fact, the URC competition to have Benetton, at this level again. But I just think, and adding competition as well. But I think that there were probably several reasons why Connacht, I don't think, performed as well as they were. One, obviously, is the weather. Look, no matter what we say, it does take its toll on people who are not used to the heat, or et cetera, et cetera. Two, I not necessarily would agree with, on this particular occasion, with the selection of at least one player. And I know it's very hard to say that, but I just don't think the contribution was probably what people would have expected from an international and a lion such as Bundee Aki. I don't know whether he's not fit. I'm not really sure, but I just don't think he added to the occasion. When you compare it to last week with someone like Cahill Ford, who came in and delivered a man of the match performance. So I'm not sure. I mean, it's hard. It's hard for me to judge the reasoning for. You would normally expect to put your lion on the field and him to deliver, whether it's just the fact that he has any other issues that are going on, whether it's like coming back in, he hasn't trained with them and he's not familiar with the systems. But I certainly don't think he added to the fluidity of the game that was there in the previous weeks for Connacht.
Certainly not. And before I bring William in, let's hear what Andy Friend had to say as William interviewed him directly after the match.
And that was a hugely disappointing performance, 12-0 up and a bit of control in the game. But once Benetton scored, it slipped away and it never came back.
Yeah, you're dead right, mate. Like I think it was 17 minutes, we're up 12-0 and, we'd been playing the sort of rugby we've been playing where we just on top of teams and looking after possession. We could win our own ball. We were making tackles, and then all of a sudden that seemed to go out the window. So it's very frustrating, mate. And we're now out of that Challenge Cup, which was something we were really targeting to go much further on.
It's very difficult because it's just happened. But is there anything that you can see? I mean, Connacht away from home are a different beast to when they're at home, and that's maybe the same for all teams. But there seemed to be just a falling off in performance and a bit of panic once Treviso scored their first try. Is there anything that you can identify for that?
Well, I mean, certainly late in the half, I thought we certainly looked a bit headless. To me, that first half, or late in the game, I should say, that first half, it was more just about, we couldn't look after our own ball and therefore we couldn't build any pressure. I thought Treviso they'd done a pretty good scout on us and they'd looked to want to come back down short side a couple of times. It was hot here, so we had some bodies that probably weren't moving as quickly as they normally move. And some of those early tries from Benetton were a result of that, where we just, we really pride ourselves on our ability to get back up in the defensive line and become hard opposition, but we didn't see that as much today, and I reckon some of that was down to the heat. The disappointing thing was, at half time when we're scoring a bit behind, we're still very much in the game there, but we didn't really come out and fire a shot in the second half, and that was probably the most disappointing bit, William.
just looking at some of the players selected, from my perspective, watching on a screen, Bundyaki didn't seem to have the presence in this game as maybe that we've seen with Ireland recently. And the centre partnership there, operating off some scrappy ball at times, didn't get over the gain line and didn't get Connacht involved.
Yeah, listen, that's something which we'll review all players when we sit down and go through that game. But you know, for us as a team, we just seem to be a very different team to the one we were last week, where, you know, I thought some of our rugby was exceptional. I thought early on we were touching on those heights again, but after about the 20th minute, we didn't seem to be able to continue on with that. We certainly weren't sustaining that. So we'll need to have a look at that, William, and try and pinpoint what it was that we felt was wrong.
If you're alluding to that, is that an issue for the players not performing as well?
Oh, listen,
does that involve the whole unit between coaches and players?
No, listen, it's a whole team thing there. I think there'll certainly be some frustrated players there who sometimes you just have days where things don't go for you. We had a chunk of error there today in terms of our ability to win the ball for a start and then to look after the ball. You know, some of our carries, we were turning over easy possession. Some of our kicks were quite loose. Some of our set piece stuff where we've been so good just wasn't there. So maybe it's just one of those days. I said, I know that you know, the heat was definitely a factor for us, but bottom line is, mate, it was not a good performance by us, and you know, we got our tails between our legs now, and we're heading home now out of the Challenge Cup, which is very disappointing, very frustrating.
And are you concerned about the performances away from home? It seems to be a bigger challenge for Connacht than maybe some other teams. Is that something going forward you have to overcome, and that might be work on for next season?
Yeah, listen, I think we've shown ourselves and our supporters that, and anyone cares to watch, that we can win away from home. You know, the previous game away from home was Dragons, which was a tight game, and we won that. You know, we have won games away from home this year. Ospreys away from home, Breve away from home. We've fallen to Newcastle now. We've fallen to Benetton. We beaten Zebre the previous game from that too, away from home. So we can win away from home. We know we can. I don't think that's a factor, to be honest with you. I just think it was one of those days, mate, where we weren't we weren't at our best. I thought Benetton were, in fairness to them, and I thought, you know, their mental fortitude to stay in that game at 12-0 down, and you know, that score that they got that got them to 12-7 was a good score, and then they just seemed to grow from that, and we didn't. And that's probably the disappointing thing. You know, I think more so the way we wilted. We need to show a lot more fight than that.
Yes, William, you were asking Andy about the fact that Bundy didn't really impact the game the way we would have liked, and Mac tried his best, but neither of them really brought a whole hell of a lot today.
No, they didn't. It was a poor performance. For a side that went 12-0 up away, you expect a better consistency about what they were doing, but they couldn't hold on to the ball after the 20th minute, as Andy said. The problem with this side is, away from home, the only thing that's consistent about them is their inconsistency. It's very, very hard to figure what exactly Connacht are going to do. And that performance asks as many questions as answers, really. There was a panicky feel to it. There was Benetton were up for it. 5, 6, 7 Italian internationals in the starting 15, and a couple of other high quality international players floating around. But it was the way that Connacht fell apart, really. To concede 3 converted tries from the 20th minute on meant that at half time they were still well in it, but they came out in the second half and they were 28-12 down before we blinked. And at that stage they were chasing the game, but even when they chased the game, they weren't very good. They were inaccurate. They were losing the breakdowns. The line out failed today, which has normally been really strong, and nobody really hit the performance levels, particularly when you remember what they did a week ago against Edinburgh. That game was at home. Edinburgh are struggling, but they were full of internationals. But there was a cohesiveness to Connacht last week that just completely, they never got to that level today or even close to it. But you would still have expected when you get a lead that should give you confidence. But the minute the first try went in, you could see there was a problem. And when the second try went in, you thought, OK, this is getting difficult. And it just got harder and harder.
Yeah, they seemed to lack a sense of leadership out there. Maybe Jack Carty not being fit was a bigger issue than people realised.
Oh, I'm certainly Jack. Obviously Jack is a leader. He's the captain, and he's been that all season. When you take him out of the equation, obviously someone else is supposed to step up. I'm not. It's hard for someone sometimes to step into those positions in a situation like that. So certainly Jack is a huge loss. I mean, there's other players, as well who have. Look, just compare it to last week's match. I mean, I know you're facing you've different opposition, different occasion. You're away from home. There is the heat. But if you just look at last week's match, which was a completely different performance from Connacht, so I'm not really sure. We went back to some of the older, more established players. And maybe this is telling us that maybe some of these new young players, and I accept that those experienced players should have been on the pitch. Mm-hmm. One would have expected them to perform, and there's nothing in the sense of there's nothing wrong with the selection because that's what most normal people would have done. But I'm just saying on this particular occasion they didn't perform. And was it because they hadn't been together, playing together for a number of weeks? Because we have seen a lot of changes in the team. I don't really know. But on this particular occasion, it just didn't get it together.
They certainly didn't. But maybe in the longer run, this is actually a good thing, William, because now they have a week off, and the Cardiff game has become the be-all and end-all now. Because you win against Cardiff, and if you can get a bonus point against Cardiff, you're guaranteeing Champions Cup rugby next year. And the format's still the same as last year, so it's only 4 games in the pool stages, so it shouldn't have as big an impact on us as it would normally do. And we've looked like we're going to have a better squad next year anyway.
Yeah, the squad does look better for next year. I think one key player missing today was Jared Butler. I think he's been huge in the last couple of weeks, and I think he was a big help to Caelan Blade in controlling the controllables last week. It didn't look like that today, and it was a shaky performance. It's still very annoying at this time of the season, though, if you're a fan and you're sitting watching that and you're wondering, well, what happened here? Yeah, Benetton are a decent side. They're 8-8 in the URC. They probably are not going to get any further because their last 2 games are in South Africa. And well as they played today, I don't think that's enough to win in South Africa. And I suspect that they know this is their be-all and end-all. They have a home quarter final coming up. And Connacht haven't. So now it's about Cardiff on April the 15th. That's a massive game. They have another go in the competition, but it's away to Glasgow. And Glasgow are a good side, and they're a particularly good side at Scotstoun. I think their record at the minute is 20 wins and 2 losses in the last 22 games. They just don't lose there.
Well, they've never lost to us there. I'm not sure it's going to change looking at our away performance. Like I never felt confident going into this game anyway, Linley, because I looked at our away record and went, we're not going to beat these guys.
I wouldn't have quite put it like that. I mean, I was reasonably confident that Connacht, having produced a performance like they had last week, were going to kind of reproduce a performance like that, today. But as I said, there's so many changes that went into it. You are travelling, you've got the heat. There's a lot of different reasons for it. But as I said, I just don't think there were some players who performed on that pitch. It's up to obviously the coaches, and they'll identify all these things that went wrong on the day. But I just felt that I take William's point about Jared Butler, and probably an unsung hero in terms of my eyes, in terms of Connacht, who's so experienced, so calm, because it needed someone there to calm the whole thing down, and it doesn't seem to be anyone there who could take that role. So it's always about striking the balance. I mean, you put young fellas out there, some of the young fellas out there today, some of them perform, but if it's all about the whole, isn't it? It's all about the 15 or the 23 that take the pitch if you've got those people there. And I very much take William's point about lacking some, and particularly someone like Jared Butler on that pitch. I think he's quite an underrated player, actually.
Yeah, I agree. The team dynamics didn't seem to work today, and the body language was pretty awful after a long time in the game. It looked like we had a lot of 15 players out there playing for themselves rather than playing as a team.
Yeah, there was a bit of that going on. I mean, obviously, look, Finlay Beelam's missing. He would have been a first name in there. Maybe Josh Murphy. He's still coming back from a HIA issue. So there maybe when we're down those type of players, we just haven't quite got the depth we need. One thing I will say is if, and this isn't an excuse, but people have to understand this. Connacht left Galway at 3:00 on Thursday afternoon for this game. They went up to Dublin. They stayed overnight. They flew yesterday morning to Venice. They got on a bus. They went to Treviso. They stayed in Treviso last night. They played the game today and they will fly home tomorrow afternoon. If that was Leinster going to play in that game, irrespective of whether it's in the URC or it's the European rugby, Leinster would have got on a plane yesterday afternoon at about 3:30, flown to Treviso, bus to the hotel, do what they have to do, play the game, have a bit of food and fly home tonight. And that is one of the differences. That is a big help for teams. The Welsh teams are still chartering planes. I don't quite know where they're getting the money from, but they're all getting... That issue's been put to bed for a couple of weeks until it blows up again, but there is a deal done. The Scottish teams chartered. Edinburgh flew in last week, flew in Friday, flew home Saturday evening from Shannon. That is a difference. It's a different setup. Connacht are used to it, but it's just worth noting. It's the small things, but they should have been better prepared today for that. It was hot. Well, it was warm. It's 18 degrees. It's not that hot. But it was a lethargic, disjointed display.
Only after 15 minutes, because for the first 15 minutes we were commentating, we were saying this is very similar to what they were doing last week. But then it all fell apart.
Well, we had the same last year in Edinburgh. We led 8-0 in Edinburgh and we thought, okay, this isn't going too badly. And then they scored 8 converted tries and lost 56-8. Sides do pick it up. But Connacht's problem is they don't seem to be able to stop them away from home. I mean, yeah, Benetton are going to score. So they got a good try. It's 12-7, fine. But the whole effort dropped off from that. And by half-time and immediately after half-time, the 5 minutes either side of half-time, championship minutes, they scored 2 tries. They converted them. They're 28-12 up. And you're thinking, OK, it's going to take something special. But it never materialised. And that's the frustration. It's something they have to work on. And Cardiff is massive. That's a huge game. That should be a sellout. You would hope they might sell enough tickets to get some extra terracing in, because that's the season.
It is. It can't be any bigger, Linley, because they need Champions Cup, because apparently that's where there's extra money. You get more money, you get more exposure. We've got better players. When we say better players coming in, when you're saying a world-class player like Santiago Cordero, you are improving your squad. You've got Joe Joyce coming in as well. So there is more players coming along that'll hopefully make the team even better. So they do need Champions Cup rugby next year, and that's why today is now gone, it's over, finished. Let's get going with Cardiff.
It's all very well to say it's gone and it's over, and that's true. But I think you also have to go back and look at Connacht's away record. Newcastle, I think the loss in Newcastle was actually was actually had a major impact on who we played in this competition. And I think there's another situation where Connacht were on top, completely on top, should never have lost, and did. So when William's talking about these performances away from home, that's one of they have to actually look at that and ask themselves, what is it away from home that Connacht, when they're on top and they have the games by the scruff of the neck, just can't seem to pull it off. And I think if Connacht had that game home and hosed in Newcastle, they wouldn't have been playing Benetton. I don't know who they would have been playing. It doesn't really matter now. It's
they would have been at home.
But, well, exactly, they would have been at home. And what a huge difference it makes. So, yes, in that sense, it's gone. But those things, I think, still have to be analysed and, a little bit find out exactly, is there any obvious reasons for this happening, or is it just Connacht's mental mindset? And I don't really know, but I just find it's that lack of ability to see out games when they're completely on top.
Well, the problem in Newcastle really was they were 21-0 down after 17 minutes. And that killed them. And then Newcastle switched off. We got it back. There was a missed pass. 28 each under the posts. And then they go down the field and they scored a try when one of our players, who still hasn't come back, Byron Ralston, was taken out and not even looked at. I know this is old hat, but that's how seasons can twist.
Yeah.
Because Connacht would have been home quarter-final, home round of 16, a home quarter-final and a home semi-final.
If they won their games.
If they won their games. But you see, they would have been 3 home games.
Yes.
And then you have a final in Dublin. But it's small.
Yeah.
But other sides, better sides, Leinster's, Ulster's.
I don't think you can say Leinster because they are completely different to everybody else. You're looking at, we should be more comparison with Munster and certainly Munster and possibly Ulster.
Munster, Ulster, Glasgow, the sides that are ahead of us in the URC, they tend not to let chances like that slip. And the hope next year has got to be that with the influx of players that are coming in, that they will bring something different. We've 2 players coming from the English Premiership. Now, the Premiership isn't maybe the greatest league that it was, and then you've got a player coming from the top 14 in France, and you're hoping that they can influence some of the on-field stuff that you can't coach.
Yeah.
It's not all about what the coaches have said. Once they're out there, they have to get on with it themselves. You can't keep spoon-feeding them. So that's what you need. You need players on the field to make the right decisions. But as for now, it's 2 weeks' time, 15th of April. That is your season down to 1 game. And you would have taken that when you were 0-3 and 1-4.
Yeah.
After the Leinster loss, you would have said, right, if we can get this to the second last game of the season where we can achieve something, that is actually progress. But it's still a bit of an up and down line, and today was a down.
It certainly was. I'll leave the last word with Linley. Do you think we can beat Cardiff?
Of course we can beat Cardiff.
There you go.
Good
That's what I
Lord.
wanted to hear.
Listen, look, it's not, the thing about it is it's going to concentrate the mind, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's out of the way. You know, all the eggs have to go into the basket of the URC, and there are some positives, you know, on the horizon, not to mention the new players that are coming in, but also obviously someone like John Muldoon who is coming back in. And I think that's a huge fillip for the province, to be honest, because we haven't had possibly that voice within Connacht on the coaching setup, and I think it makes a huge difference to the psychology of Connacht as a group of players, that there is that coaching voice who is a Connacht, understands Connacht, has played for Connacht, has played at the highest level, and I think he will make a huge addition to Connacht when he comes in.
I think he will. Okay, I think we'll leave it there, and we'll just reference the fact that the Irish women didn't have a great day today either. So that's 3 Irish teams that have been beaten today, because Munster were well beaten too. But Ulster and Leinster's on, so at least 1 Irish team are going to be in the next round of a European competition, because one of them has to win today. But we'll leave it there, and we'll talk again in a few days' time. I'm going to dig up some more audio that we picked up that William got in South Africa, because there's still some good audio that wasn't time specific. The likes of Paul Boyle and Mac Hansen have some really interesting things, and I think Jack Ainger have an awful lot of good stuff that we can fire out to you guys as we wait for the next round of the URC, which is in 2 weeks' time. Bye, folks.
Loose, cut it loose. Break out or nothing changes. Side